U.S. Navy submarine missing for 75 years has been found off Okinawa, Japan.
After more than 75 years beneath the waves, a lost World War II submarine has finally been discovered. The USS Grayback SS-28 was a powerful American submarine that vanished during the height of the war. It was recently found deep in the waters of the East China Sea, closing in on an 80-year-old mystery. The fact that there is still interest in finding every detail and closing the chapter on what happened 80 years ago is remarkable. But the shocking discovery didn't end there. As researchers peered inside the wreck, they were left in disbelief by what they saw. The secrets held within the submerged tomb were far more haunting than anyone could have imagined. What they uncovered quite literally stunned the world. The USS Grayback, a forgotten legend of World War II, was no ordinary submarine. It was one of the most formidable vessels of its time and achieved remarkable success during the war. Launched in January 1941, the Grayback was part of the U.S. Navy's fleet of submarines that played a crucial role in the Pacific theater. These silent hunters of the deep became the greatest threat to the Japanese Navy. Yet, for all its power and accomplishments, the USS Grayback would become one of the war's most intriguing mysteries. From its first patrols, the Grayback quickly became known for its deadly efficiency. Over the course of 10 war patrols, the Grayback wreaked havoc on Japanese shipping lanes. It sank a total of 14 enemy vessels, including freighters, tankers, and transports, and earned itself a reputation as a critical asset in the war effort. In recognition of its significant contributions, the submarine was awarded 2 Navy unit commendations and several battle stars. By the time it embarked on its final mission, the Grayback had sunk more than 63,000 tons of enemy shipping, ranking among the top-performing submarines in the U.S. fleet. The submarine's missions were not without risk. Operating in enemy-controlled waters, the Grayback's crew faced the constant threat of detection, depth charges, and naval engagement. But it was during its final war patrol in February 1944 that the submarine would encounter its greatest challenge and ultimately its fate. On January 28, 1944, the Grayback departed Pearl Harbor on its 10th and final patrol. The submarine was tasked with targeting enemy shipping off the coast of Okinawa, a mission it had performed with success many times before. However, after reporting multiple attacks and sinking several enemy ships, the Grayback's transmission suddenly ceased. For months, the fate of the USS Grayback remained a mystery. It had simply vanished without a trace. As days turned into weeks, hopes for the crew's return faded. The Navy conducted search efforts, but without modern technology or accurate coordinates, the submarine was impossible to locate. In March 1944, the Grayback was officially declared missing in action, a forgotten casualty of the war. The 80 men aboard were lost to history, their story buried beneath the waves until now. On board were presumed lost, and the details of their final moments remain a painful mystery to their families and loved ones. Theories surrounding the submarine's disappearance ranged from enemy attacks to catastrophic mechanical failure, but no definitive answers were ever found. For decades, the lost World War II submarine remained a symbol of both the bravery of its crew and the uncertainty of war. As the years passed, the Grayback became a footnote in World War II history, but the mystery of the USS Grayback was far from over. Despite its disappearance, interest in locating the submarine persisted. Researchers, historians, and family members of the lost crew refused to let the Grayback be forgotten. Decades of unsuccessful searches followed, and many assumed that the submarine's final resting place would never be found. The Pacific Ocean is vast and unforgiving, and it had swallowed the Grayback whole, or so it seemed. It wasn't until modern technology and a determined group of explorers came together that the fate of the USS Grayback was finally revealed. In 2019, after 75 years of being lost, the submarine was finally discovered in the East China Sea. This incredible find, made by Tim Taylor's Lost 52 project, a group dedicated to finding missing World War II submarines, would solve one of World War II's greatest underwater mysteries. But the discovery did more than close a chapter of forgotten history. It revealed a haunting scene inside the wreck, one that left even the most seasoned experts shocked. The role of submarines in World War II was crucial and often stealthy. These vessels shaped naval warfare in ways that were both devastating and highly strategic. Their primary function was to disrupt enemy supply lines by sinking cargo ships and naval vessels, essentially choking off the enemy's access to resources, fuel, and reinforcements. Both the Allied and Axis powers deployed submarines, with Germany's U-boats and the U.S. Navy's fleet submarines being among the most effective. In the Atlantic, German U-boats were central to the Battle of the Atlantic, where they targeted Allied merchant ships crossing from North America to Europe. The submarines operated in wolf packs, groups of submarines that coordinated attacks on convoys of supply ships. Their mission was to cut off vital supplies, particularly food, oil, and munitions, from reaching Britain and other Allied nations. The success of the U-boats early in the war created a critical situation for the Allies, forcing the development of better convoy tactics, anti-submarine technologies, and aircraft patrols to defend against them. Meanwhile, in the Pacific theater, U.S. submarines played a similarly important role against Japan. The American submarine fleet, though initially small, became one of the most lethal forces in the Pacific. After the attack on Pearl Harbor, U.S. submarines were tasked with destroying Japanese merchant ships and warships to weaken Japan's ability to maintain its vast empire. They targeted troop transports, tankers, and freighters, gradually crippling Japan's war economy by depriving it of necessary resources. By the end of the war, U.S. submarines had sunk more than half of Japan's merchant marine fleet, making a significant contribution to the eventual Allied victory in the Pacific. Whether lurking in the icy waters of the Atlantic or patrolling the vast Pacific Ocean, submarines proved to be invaluable, employing their stealth and firepower to turn the tides of World War II. The hunt for the lost sub, 75 years of uncertainty. The search for the grayback was plagued by one challenge after another: failed efforts, deep ocean currents, and even errors in historical records. For 3/4 of a century, the submarine remained one of World War II's great unsolved mysteries. All that was known was that the USS Grayback had vanished in February 1944, somewhere in the vast waters of the East China Sea, following a successful series of attacks on enemy vessels. When it failed to return from its patrol, the Navy declared it missing in action. Early search operations relied on the information available at the time, which was limited by World War II-era technology. With no exact coordinates or reliable tracking systems, pinpointing the Grayback's location proved nearly impossible. One of the key reasons the Grayback remained lost for so long was a simple yet devastating error in the historical records. After the war, Japanese war records indicated that a submarine matching the description of the Grayback had been sunk by Japanese aircraft in February 1944 near Okinawa. However, the exact coordinates were misrecorded and placed the submarine's location over 100 miles from its actual resting place. This crucial error misled search efforts for decades. In the years following World War II, the Navy conducted multiple searches, hoping to locate the lost World War II submarine. These efforts were limited by the technology of the era and the incomplete information about the submarine's last known position. Sonar technology was in its infancy during the post-war years and lacked the precision needed to detect a wreck as deep as the Grayback's. The vastness of the Pacific, combined with the submarine's likely location in a deep-sea trench, meant that even the most determined efforts came up empty-handed. As time passed, the trail grew colder, and the Grayback slowly faded from the public's memory. But for the families of the crew, the mystery of the USS Grayback never faded. Many of the relatives of the 80 men on board held out hope that the submarine's final resting place would one day be discovered. Among these hopeful families were those like Gloria Hurry, the niece of Grayback crewman Raymond Parks. She spent decades seeking answers. Their persistent questions about the fate of their loved ones helped ensure that the search for the Grayback continued, even when it seemed like the submarine would remain lost forever. It wasn't until the early 21st century that significant progress was made, thanks in large part to advancements in deep-sea exploration technology. Enter Tim Taylor and the Lost 52 Project, a group dedicated to finding the lost submarines of World War II. The 52 American submarines that went missing during World War II were the focus of an ambitious mission led by Tim Taylor, an experienced underwater explorer. Taylor had already been involved in several successful underwater discoveries, and the mystery of the USS Grayback was one of his team's most ambitious goals. He launched the Lost 52 Project in 2010, combining modern technology with historical research to locate and honor the lost submarines and their crews. Using advanced sonar equipment, remote-operated vehicles, and underwater drones, the Lost 52 Project team set out to locate the Grayback. Their mission was clear: to find these submarines, return them to the pages of history, and offer long-overdue closure to the families of the lost sailors. In 2018, the Lost 52 Project received a critical breakthrough when Yutaka Iwasaki, a Japanese researcher, discovered a long-overlooked discrepancy in the wartime records. The coordinates for the USS Greyback's supposed location had been incorrectly transcribed, placing the wreck much further from its actual location. With this new information in hand, Taylor's team recalculated the submarine's final resting place and focused their efforts on the revised location. In June 2019, after years of searching, and with the help of Iwasaki's correction, the Lost 52 project made a remarkable discovery. The USS Greyback was finally located, resting 1,400 feet beneath the surface of the East China Sea. The sonar scans and ROV footage confirmed it. The lost World War II submarine had been found. However, the real mystery was only just beginning to unfold. The decades of uncertainty were over, but the secrets hidden within the submarine's hull were still waiting to be uncovered. It was a moment of triumph and horror. On a calm June day in 2019, in the depths of the East China Sea, the lost World War II submarine USS Greyback was finally discovered. This marked the culmination of decades of searching, missed opportunities, and a long-hidden error in the historical records. The moment was nothing short of triumphant for the crew aboard the research vessel. However, the discovery was not just a moment of victory. It would soon be tinged with a haunting sense of horror as the team began to explore the wreckage and realize the grim reality of what had happened inside the submarine. What the experts found left them shocked. For weeks, the Lost 52 project team had mapped the ocean floor with advanced sonar equipment and remotely operated vehicles. Each scan brought them closer to their goal, but the ocean's vastness and the depth of the submarine made the search painstakingly slow. Yet they pressed on, driven by the knowledge that they were close to solving one of World War II's great mysteries. Each ping from the sonar equipment brought a new sense of hope. Then the breakthrough came. The ROVs captured an unmistakable image of a large object resting deep beneath the surface, 1,400 feet below the waves. The hull of the USS Greyback appeared on the sonar scans, its silhouette eerily intact despite the decades it had spent at the bottom of the sea. The moment the confirmation came, the ship's crew erupted into celebration. But the merrymaking was short-lived, as the reality of what they were about to uncover began to sink in. What they found as they moved closer would reveal even more about the tragic fate of the USS Greyback and its crew. The submarine was in remarkably good condition, but there was a massive gaping hole in the conning tower. It was immediately clear that this was no ordinary sinking. The damage suggested a catastrophic explosion, likely the result of the Japanese bomber that had been reported to have attacked the submarine in 1944. The force of the blast must have been devastating, instantly crippling the Greyback and sealing the fate of its crew. As the ROVs moved inside the wreck, the team encountered a haunting sight. The interior of the submarine, though partially collapsed and filled with silt, still retained remnants of its final moments. The control room, once bustling with the energy of 80 men on a dangerous war patrol, was now eerily still. Personal items, including a rusted wristwatch, dog tags, and a few tattered photos, lay scattered among the debris. The eerie stillness of the wreckage told a story of lives cut short in an instant. But it was the discovery of the remains of the crew that shocked the experts the most. Inside the wreckage, skeletons were found still seated at their stations, as though they had been frozen in time. Some were in the torpedo room, and others in the control room, where they would have been manning their posts when the explosion hit. The violent nature of the sinking was evident in the way the remains were positioned. It became clear that the crew had little time to react before the submarine was destroyed. The sheer force of the blast, combined with the sudden flooding of the sub, meant that there was no hope of escape for any of the men aboard. The sight of these remains, so far from home, was a stark reminder of the human cost of war. For the team aboard the research vessel, what had begun as a moment of triumph quickly became a sobering experience. The long-lost crew of the USS Greyback had finally been found, but their fate was more tragic than anyone could have imagined. As the team continued to explore the wreckage, they knew that this discovery would bring closure to the families of the men who had been lost for so long. The images captured by the ROVs were shared with the relatives of the crew, who had waited decades for answers about their loved ones. For them, the discovery of the lost World War II submarine was bittersweet, a long-awaited resolution to a painful chapter in their family histories. Uncovering a submerged tomb, the most striking feature of the Greyback wreck was the massive hole in the conning tower. The conning tower, once the command center of the submarine where officers issued orders and steered the vessel, had been ripped apart by an explosion. The size of the hole was staggering, and it told a grim story. The force of the blast would have been enough to cripple the submarine and flood its compartments within seconds. The damage extended down into the hull, where the ROV revealed twisted metal, torn wires, and shattered equipment, all of which bore witness to the sheer power of the explosion. This damage had doomed the Greyback and her crew. Trapped them in their watery grave as the ROV navigated deeper into the wreck, the team began to understand just how sudden and catastrophic the attack must have been. The narrow passageways that had once echoed with the footsteps of sailors were now silent, and the walls, once lined with gauges and dials, were covered in rust and marine life. As the ROV moved toward the control room and torpedo compartments, the team made the grim and emotional find: the skeletal remains of crew members. The skeletons were largely undisturbed, and their positions indicated that the men had been at their posts when the explosion struck. Some were found in the control room, where they had been operating the sub's navigation and communication systems. Others were in the torpedo room, likely preparing to fire on enemy vessels. As the ROV continued its exploration, more of the submarine's interior was revealed. The torpedo tubes, once loaded with weapons aimed at enemy ships, were now empty, but the sense of urgency and danger that must have filled the room in those final moments was palpable. The control room, with its rusted dials and broken levers, was a haunting relic of a battle that had ended in silence. For the Lost 52 project team, it was the culmination of years of hard work and dedication to honoring the memory of the 52 submarines lost during World War II. In the quiet darkness of the ocean depths, the USS Greyback now remains a silent monument, a reminder of the perils faced by submariners during World War II. The men who gave their lives in service to their country are now immortalized in the story of this shocking discovery, a story that continues to resonate with all who learn of the submarine's tragic end. The human story of the USS Greyback's crew reveals that they had been some of the Navy's finest submariners. They operated in secrecy, often cut off from communication for weeks at a time as they carried out missions critical to the war effort. Despite the constant threat of enemy attack, the crew of the Greyback displayed remarkable courage and commitment to their duty. Their successful missions had made them legends among their peers, and even as they embarked on their final patrol in early 1944, they were determined to continue their fight for freedom. The discovery of the Greyback was significant for the families who had been waiting for answers for so many years. Gloria Hurry, like many of the relatives of the lost crew, had grown up hearing stories of her uncle's bravery and service. When the news of the Greyback's discovery reached Gloria and other families, it provided a sense of closure that had long been absent. These families finally had a tangible connection to the place where their loved ones had given their lives. The discovery also allowed them to honor the crew's legacy in a way they hadn't been able to before. The stories of the men aboard the Greyback were now preserved, ensuring their sacrifice would never be forgotten. The story of the USS Greyback has been shared with the world, reminding people of the extraordinary courage required to serve in such dangerous conditions. Gloria Heary, reflecting on the discovery, said, "For so long, we wondered if we would ever know what happened. Now we finally have the answers we needed. It's been such a long journey, but we're grateful to have closure." Tim Taylor, the leader of the Lost 52 project, spoke about the importance of giving the families closure, saying, "This project isn't just about finding submarines. It's about remembering the men who were lost. We owe it to them and their families to ensure their stories are told." The mystery of what really happened to the USS Greyback had puzzled historians and researchers for years. Theories about the Greyback's disappearance had swirled, with many struggling to determine exactly what had happened to the submarine and its 80 crew members. Now, thanks to the discovery and analysis of the wreck, the answer to the long-standing question has come to light. The leading theory, based on both Japanese wartime records and the wreckage itself, is that the Greyback was hit by a Japanese bomber on February 27, 1944. According to the records, a Japanese Nakajima B-5N Kate bomber had spotted the Greyback while it was surfaced near Okinawa. The sub was preparing to dive after completing a successful patrol when the bomber dropped 2 bombs on the submarine. One struck the conning tower directly. The evidence from the wreck supports this theory. The conning tower showed extensive damage, with the edges of the hull twisted and torn, indicating a powerful external blast. This damage would have disabled the Greyback's ability to dive and left it vulnerable to further attacks. The second bomb, which likely missed the conning tower, may have caused additional damage to the hull, contributing to the flooding that sank the submarine. The impact of the bombs, combined with the loss of control in the damaged conning tower, would have made it impossible for the crew to save the vessel. As the submarine began to take on water, the crew would have been trapped inside. The rapid flooding of the compartments likely led to the Greyback sinking within minutes. The debris around the wreck suggests that the submarine sank in one piece, but the force of the bombs and the flooding caused the interior to collapse in certain areas, sealing the crew's fate. The position of the wreck, 1,400 feet below the surface, also aligns with the theory that the Greyback was hit while on the surface. Submarines of that era typically surfaced between patrols to recharge their batteries and communicate with headquarters. The Greyback was known to have completed a successful patrol, sinking several Japanese vessels in the days leading up to its disappearance. It was likely in the process of surfacing to report back to base when it was spotted by the enemy bomber. The USS Greyback had been a victim of enemy action, struck down in the final stages of its mission. The legacy of the Lost 52 project is a mission to find the lost submarines and honor the memories of those who served aboard them. Through their efforts, the stories of these brave men and their sacrifices are being brought to light, ensuring that their legacy is never forgotten. The discovery of the lost World War II submarine USS Greyback in 2019 was just one chapter in the broader mission of the Lost 52 project. The project is dedicated to locating the 52 American submarines that were lost during World War II. These submarines, along with their brave crews, vanished beneath the sea, and their fates have been largely unknown for decades. The project's goal is to honor these submariners, preserve their stories, and bring closure to the families who have waited so long for answers. For the Lost 52 project, the lost submarines represent not just missing vessels but missing pieces of wartime history, submerged mysteries waiting to be brought back into the light. Each discovery made by the Lost 52 project provides crucial insights into the dangerous missions carried out by submariners during World War II and offers a glimpse into their heroic efforts and the challenges they faced in enemy waters. These missions were critical to the war effort, yet many ended in tragedy, with the submarines disappearing without a trace, until now. The discovery of the Greyback was one of several successful finds by the Lost 52 project. In 2017, the team located the USS 28, a submarine that had disappeared off the coast of Hawaii during a training exercise in 1944. In 2019, they also found the USS 12, another submarine lost during a training mission in Florida waters. These discoveries, like the Greyback, have brought long-awaited answers to the families of the fallen crew members, offering closure after decades of uncertainty. As of now, the project's work is far from over. Tim Taylor and his team continue to search for the remaining submarines lost during World War II, driven by a commitment to bringing these long-forgotten vessels back into the historical record. Their mission is both a technical challenge and a moral one. Each submarine they locate helps to fill in the gaps of World War II history and ensures that the stories of these lost submariners are not forgotten. The legacy of the Lost 52 project is one of discovery and remembrance. Each time a lost submarine is found, the project not only uncovers a piece of hidden history, but also restores dignity to the men who served aboard those vessels. Through its continued efforts, the Lost 52 project is keeping the memory of these submariners alive, ensuring that their courage and service are honored for generations to come. Do you think it is important to keep looking for lost submarines and the remains of servicemen so long after the war? Share your thoughts in the comments. We'd love to hear. For now, we're done. Catch you in the next video.